The whole problem with your chess is that, like, your cooking, it's become a little bit bland, needs salt, pepper, spices, chutneys, all that jazz. And so what I want you to do is to start giving up the center in your games. You'll be like, whoa, light squares, no way. You expect me to play this setup with the black pieces? We have c4 on the board, we have d4 on the board, we have e4. They're taking over the center. I don't have developed pieces. My pawns are not in the center. My chess coach told me to avoid situations like this. As your chess coach probably still listens to Brian Adams, okay? And so the whole point of this opening is that we are going to attack the center from the flanks. So we're going to play bishop b7, putting pressure on the e4 pawn, bishop b4, trying to pin a knight here, and also look to play moves like f5. So let me show you. In this position, we go with bishop b7, okay, knight c3, defending the e4 pawn, bishop b4, the e4 pawn is hanging, and now, depending on what they do, in most lines here, we are going to play f5. And so before we go into all the details of this, let's motivate the discussion here a bit and say that in the Lichess database, despite how good this looks for white with these 3 pawns in the center, black has a favorable record. You can see the graphic up on your screen right now, 1.6 million games in the Lichess database, and black has won more. 49%, white has won only 47%. And what this shows is that at the beginner and intermediate level, controlling the center like this, defending your pawns in the center, is actually much harder than it looks, and we can look to undermine white's position. And so before we go into the details here, let's look at how to get to that setup with the 3 pawns in the center. What's beautiful is you can get there with e4 players and d4 players. So let's say you have e4, we have b6, d4, they'll take over the center. Most people will do this. In this position, you could play bishop b7, and that's an interesting line. However, then the e4 pawn is under attack, and your opponent is forced to play something like knight c3 or bishop d3. An interesting move here, I think the engine says it's fine, is just to play e6. Many are going to play c4. And now we can go with bishop b7, knight c3, bishop b4, and we have the position as we saw earlier on. If they go with d4, we go with b6. In this position, let's say they go with c4. You could play bishop b7 in this position. However, then they have to first play knight c3 in order to play e4. So instead, just go ahead and play e6 in this position. Inviting e4, most will go ahead and do that. And now we have the same as before. Bishop b7, knight c3, bishop b4. And it's in this position that our analysis starts. And we're going to follow Lawrence Trent's B6 Against Everything course, which I bought on Chessable and I highly recommend. And so the most popular move in the Lichess database is going to be bishop to d3. Very intuitive. It's a good move. Defending the e4 pawn here. And here we just go ahead and play this move f5. And so never move your f pawn except when light squares tells you to. And in this position they cannot take. Bishop takes g2, wins the game, wins the rook. In this position, queen h5 check is a try, and you must play king f8, and you're completely winning. You cannot play g6 because after takes, knight to f6, g7 check, you can take the queen, but they're just going to make a new queen, and white is totally winning. Under no circumstances after queen h5 check, which is a try from white, can you play g6. You must play king f8. And so you see, if you play accurately, white cannot take here on f5. And so most players are going to play f3. Now what Lawrence Trent discusses in his course is queen h4 check. We have g3, queen h5. And you can see how annoying this is starting to get for white because they made all these pawn moves, quite committal. And they're definitely not going to castle short. They're going to have holes around the white king. And so really, if they're going to castle, they're going to castle long. And this is not really a quiet game. Whereas it's conceivable that you're going to castle maybe any side, long or short. And so you have options. In this position, bishop d2 is the move discussed in Trent's course. We have knight to c6. The d4 pawn is hanging. Many will just push. Knight to e5. Bishop e2 trying to save the bishop. Here, knight f6. Just go ahead and develop. You see what I'm talking about before. You can castle short. You can castle long. In this position, many are going to play f4. Knight to g4. h3 isn't an issue because if they take, we are going to take their rook. And so this is a complicated position. It's wild, but it's kind of my style of chess. It's going to create kind of complications and tactics and chances to win the game. If in this position, instead of bishop to d2, they just start to take, it's very important not to engage in this. Just knight f6, let a pawn go. And I'll show you an amazing line here. After f takes e6, d takes e6, queen e2. Most players are going to play queen e2 because they want to attack this pawn. It's a loose pawn. And I want you to pause the video and work out the move here, the best move here for white. And it is absolutely gangster. Clint Eastwood, go ahead, make my day. You were probably thinking that in this position, castles is a move, and if they take, then you're going to trap the queen with the rook. You don't need to do any of that. You can just play knight c6. Amazing. Queen takes e6, check, and you just play king f8, and you're totally winning. Have a look at this engine evaluation. -2 on the engine. White is up 2 pawns for now. They're going to have to give those pawns back. But black is totally winning. And so in this position, what can the queen do? Because this rook is coming to e8 and going to trap it. They can't really go to e2 because we're going to take here on d4. So they just go for a queen exchange, takes. And now we have knight takes d4. We got one of our pawns back. This pawn is now hanging. It's double attacked, as you can see. And white can't even move it because the rook is hanging here on h1. And if they try to defend, of course, it's just the classic remove the defender tactic. Knight c2 wins the rook here in the corner. So you can see how this is a very tight rope for white to navigate. Alternatively, in this position, let's say your opponent doesn't defend by playing bishop to d3. They play f3. Just go ahead and play f5 anyway in this position. And we can transpose if they go ahead and play bishop to d3. Now, some people in this position, and I believe this is a line that's discussed in Trent's course, are going to play e takes f5, and in this position, knight to h3, they take, knight f5, and a whole bunch of stuff can happen here. So for example, let's say they take here on d7, knight takes d7, and here, queen e2, looks very threatening, and you can go ahead and play this absolute gangster move, king to f7. Wow, I love this opening, guys. Look at this. King to f7 is completely winning. Let's have a look on the engine here. -1. Okay, in beginner land, intermediate land, that's nothing, but it is a very good position for black if you can find the correct moves. Obviously, in this position, rook to e8 threatens to trap some pieces or even the queen. Okay, so what else can they do in that position before? So if we go into this position, just note that it's quite hard to play accurately here for white. Let's say they do something like this, queen to e2. It's just a really bad move because of queen to h4. In this position, this e4 pawn is double attacked, and there's no real way to defend it again. You can't play f3 because the f pawn is pinned. You can't get your bishop out. If you do something like bishop to d2, we obviously just have a remove the defender tactic. And so there aren't many options here for players with the white pieces. They could try d5 in this position. Bishop takes c3, b takes c3. Now critical move, queen e7. And in this position, most popular move in the Lichess database is telling me here is knight to f3. And that just blunders a pawn. After takes, we have something like this. We're just winning material. If they try to do something else, bishop to d3. We have in this position, we have takes. And here we can go ahead and play this move f5. Queen h5 is not a problem because of g6. And it's just a fascinating game. You're putting here a lot of pressure on the e4 pawn. I think what the engine wants you to do in this position, you can go ahead and study this, is to play bishop to e2. Now, before I close this video, it's worth noting that your opponent doesn't need to play knight c3 in this position. And so I've already discussed this in a previous video, but it just helps to make this video complete. Go over it very quickly. If your opponent plays this move d5, which is telling me here in the Lichess database, some 62% of people play knight c3 in this position, but 16% are going to play d5. It's going to be very popular. If they do that, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, and now the critical move queen e7, similar to before, we're trying to utilize a potential pin here along the e file. They just really need to be taking and simplifying the game. Many will play a3, most popular move in the Lichess database. Bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, most popular move. And now they're going to lose 2 pawns because we have takes, and say queen takes e4, they block the check. Queen takes d5, they deliver their own check on d6, and we can go for a queen exchange here on e4. And if they don't oblige, then there is a massive threat here along this diagonal on the g2 square. And so you see, guys, we're giving up the center, but we're getting a lot of counter-attacking chances. And this is probably why when you look inside the Lichess database, the stats look pretty good for black. So something to try in your games. Have fun, guys.